imputación, edición y no respuesta. Ok, entonces, repito, estamos en la sesión 1, Experiencias de oficinas nacionales de Estadística de Canadá y Suecia con imputación, edición y no respuesta. Vamos a tener 2 participaciones. La primera estará a cargo de Anders Wallgren y Britt Wallgren, de Estadísticas de Suecia y de la Universidad de Örebro. Mi sueco no es nada bueno, así que si no lo dije bien, por favor, discúlpenme. Y bueno, es un honor tener a los Wallgren aquí con nosotros. Tenemos una versión traducida de uno de sus libros que se imprimió en el INEGI hace algunos años y que fue distribuido al interior del INEGI con varias de las oficinas nacionales de estadística de América Latina. Y realmente es un gusto tenerlos con nosotros. También es un gusto tener con nosotros a Marcel Bureau. ¿Es correcto? Okay. Marcel Bureau, de Estadística Canadá, y él nos va a platicar de la edición e imputación en Estadísticas de Canadá, una mirada al censo de 2016. Hago una breve reseña de nuestros conferencistas. Anders Wallgren y Britt Wallgren tienen una formación como profesores en estadística en la Universidad de Estocolmo y en la Universidad Linköping en Suecia. Han realizado investigaciones en estadísticas basadas en registros en Statistics Sweden y en la Universidad de Örebro. Por muchos años trabajaron en el Departamento de Investigación y Desarrollo de Statistics Sweden sobre métodos de encuestas utilizados para producir estadísticas basadas en registros. Desde 2011 han visitado muchos países en América Latina y el Caribe para dar cursos sobre el uso de registros administrativos con fines estadísticos y discutir con sus colegas de los Institutos Nacionales de Estadística cómo el Sistema Nacional Estadístico puede beneficiarse a partir de estos registros. Marcel Bureau obtuvo su maestría en matemáticas en la Universidad de Montreal. Durante los últimos 31 años ha trabajado como metodólogo en las divisiones de métodos de encuesta empresarial y métodos de encuesta social de Statistics Canada. Durante los últimos 13 años ha sido miembro del equipo de apoyo al censo de población, utilizando el sistema de edición e imputación del censo canadiense. Si les parece bien, if you agree, we start with the Wallgrens, and you will have about 30 minutes for your presentation, and then we go to the other presentation, and finally we have 15 minutes for questions and answers. So would you like to start, please?
Yes. Yes, thank you very much for inviting me and Britt to Mexico and to this seminar. Now, I will talk tomorrow also, the headline will be the same. If we combine registers and sample surveys, then we can develop methods to improve quality in different ways. Today I will take a Swedish case and how we can reduce non-response errors by combining registers and sample surveys. And it is the labor force survey we have taken as an example, and non-response errors could be a serious problem for this survey, because as you see here, we have this is from a recent labor force survey. We have about 60% non-response among young women, and overall we have about 45% non-response. So if we did not take care of this problem in the correct way, then we could get serious problems with bias due to these non-response errors. And you see also another problem is that the non-response rate has increased very rapidly during the last years. And then, of course, we wonder what has happened with the quality of our labor force survey due to this. But if we combine this sample survey with registers, it is possible to reduce the non-response errors. And I will try to explain to you how we work with this problem at Statistics Sweden today. First, you must understand that the Swedish national production system for statistics is quite different from what is common here in the Americas. We have access to many administrative registers that we have transformed into statistical registers. We, for instance, produce census information with our statistical registers. And then also all our sample surveys use one or more of these registers. And the third issue, there are identity numbers in all registers and in all sample surveys. We do telephone interviews or mail questionnaires. We do not do face-to-face interviews because that is too expensive. We don't use area frames or address lists. We use list frames created from our registers. Area sampling we have not used for decades. But if you go back in time, we were exactly as you. We did censuses and we did area sampling, but that has long ago been abandoned. Our labor force survey uses the population register to create its sampling frame. And our labor force survey imports study variables from the population register and other registers in our system, for instance, education. And our labor force survey also import variables from registers to be used as auxiliary variables for stratification and estimation through calibration of weights. Well, since 2011, we have had the opportunity to visit Latin America many times, and we have discussed with our colleagues in many countries. We visit national statistical institutes like INEGI, and we give courses and discuss, and we know that you also have administrative registers that could be used for statistics production. And also in your administrative registers, there are identity numbers. Perhaps they are not in perfect order, but that you can improve, that you have identity numbers in all registers. And we strongly recommend you to include identity numbers in your censuses and your sample surveys, because then it will be possible for you to combine data from different sources. And that will be very important. If you do that, you will be able to find quality problems and improve quality of your surveys, but also improve your entire production system. If you look at the Swedish labor force survey, here you have employment, number of persons, percent of population, unemployment, and persons outside the labor force. This is what the labor force, the main study variables. Some background information, we do monthly samples. About 30,000 persons are selected every month. We have, as I said earlier, about 45% missing values. Non-response, complete non-response. 15,000 persons, they refuse to take part in the survey, and 30,000 persons, 30%, we are not able to contact. We have a panel design Every person is contacted every third month during 2 years. And we produce about 15,000 point estimates and 15,000 confidence intervals every month. About 2,000 series, monthly series are seasonal adjusted, and we present the data with the trend estimates from X12 or X13 ARIMA for presentation. So that is, now you have a feeling for our labor force survey. Let us go back to the problem with unit non-response. And then how? What we should do here. The problem is, how should we develop almost unbiased estimators when we have this problem with the non-response? And the answer is to use calibration estimators. And calibration estimators, that is a broad group of estimators. Most popular estimators belong to this group. And by using auxiliary information in different manners, you will get different kinds of popular methods. But all of them can be called calibration estimators. And the trick is, calibration estimation is a way we use weights, and these weights are computed with auxiliary information. And theoretically, if we have powerful auxiliary information, we can get almost unbiased estimators, even if we have non-response of this kind. Yes, auxiliary information. Here first we have the frame population, the rectangle. Then we take our sample, the yellow ellipse. And from the sample we have some persons are so nice that they respond. That is the response set. And then we have all these ones that do not respond, and that is the non-response set. And then when it comes to auxiliary information, we must have values for the auxiliary variables we want to use for all persons in the response set. And we must have frame population totals for the frame population for these auxiliary variables. And in Sweden we have good opportunities. Our frame population, we can import many auxiliary variables from our other registers, which means we can build a calibration estimator that uses auxiliary variables from many registers. So we have good opportunities to reduce non-response errors. Countries with few registers, you can perhaps use your census projection on your country level by age and sex. That is at least something. But also you have another opportunity. Here I said that we must have register totals for the frame population. But another possibility is that you only have totals for the sample. I have two big fingers. Yes. So it is sufficient. And I also have some other problems, of more intellectual kind. Yes. I said, and this we do in Sweden. We use register variables, and then we have these register variables for the entire frame population. But if you here do not have all our registers, it is sufficient that you have totals for the sample, both the non-response set and the response set. If you have these totals, you can use these estimations methods I talk about here. And that could be a possibility for you, because you have interviewers that walk around in your country and knock on doors, and these interviewers, they could collect information for the whole sample. So here they can collect auxiliary variables for the whole sample, and not only for the response set. So here you have two possibilities in countries where you do not have registers. You can use the census to get auxiliary information, or you can use your interviewers to collect informations also for those who belong to the non-response sets. For instance, housing standard they can see when they walk around. Yes, and what kind of auxiliary information do we want? And the problem is, how can we reduce the non-response errors by using auxiliary variables to calibrate our sampling weights? We want auxiliary variables that are strongly correlated with response propensity. And we want variables that are strongly correlated with our study variables, our main study variables. And also we want auxiliary variables strongly correlated with important domains in our survey. And here you see some of our registers in our statistical production system, and the red marked registers could be used by our labor force survey. From the population register, there are many variables that we use, and also we have these employment, education, and income register. They have information that is used. But here we have one other problem. The labor force survey, as it is a panel survey, the sample is drawn rather early, and these registers, they take some time before they are ready, so we can have a time lag of up to 24 months between the sample survey we want to use the auxiliary variables for and the register information. But we have some up-to-date information in this unemployment register, where we have those who apply for unemployment support. So there we have good up-to-date information. And here you can see what we use. We want variables that explain a response propensity and main study variables and identify important domains. Look here. We use auxiliary register variables for stratification and estimation. And stratification we combine sex, age group, and region and get 144 strata. And then we have a large number of auxiliary variables we use for calibration of weights. And the first one is sex combined with age group, and the second is region. And here you see the same variables we used for stratification come back here in the calibration phase. And sex and age and region we get from the population register, and then also country of birth is strongly correlated with response propensity and is also an important domain of study. And then we have the fourth group, employment by industry. These variables are strongly correlated with employment, a main study variable. And then we have this unemployment information from this administrative register, also strongly correlated with a main study variable. So our work, we can think of these 5 stages. The first step is to analyze response patterns. And you see here in the first table, you see that age is very important. Response patterns differs greatly between young and old persons. Also sex has some little influence. Country of birth, you see the response patterns are quite different. Different regions also different in response patterns, and also level of education is rather big differences in response patterns. So from all these auxiliary variables, what we should do is to choose the ones, the combination we want to use for our estimator. And this is the main issue for us at Statistics Sweden. It is here we should spend our intellectual efforts. How to choose, what variables should we choose to use for calibration, and what combination of variables. And next step, we let the software, the computer, do to produce the point estimates. We do not have to develop formulas or anything. We just use our software and get the estimates and the variances. And after that, we should check the model, and we check variances of the estimates. We want small variances, of course. And we check also the ratios between the calibrated weights and the original design weights. And extreme ratios is a sign that perhaps our combination of auxiliary variables was not so good. And then also we have a fifth step at the bottom, and that is a possibility we have in Sweden, where we have many registers, because we can use registers now again to check the model by estimating non-response bias. And let the software produce the point estimates. Here we have data that has been collected by the interviewers. So this is microdata from the sample survey. And here, into that set of data, we import from our registers these 50 or 100 or what we want auxiliary variables. Here we have the sampling weights before calibration. And here actually we have adjusted, so we do straight expansion within each of these 144 strata we have. So actually here we have adjusted for non-response in the first step. But then we use these auxiliary variables. And here we know we have register totals for all these auxiliary variables. In the register we know these are the true register totals. And then we compare these true values with the sample estimates, where we use these sampling weights before calibration. And then we have these calibration conditions for each auxiliary variable. We have one calibration condition. And what we do then, the computer calculates calibrated weights. So if we use these calibrated weights for these auxiliary variables, we will get exactly the true population totals. So with the new calibrated weights, we have got perfect estimates for these auxiliary variables. That is the idea behind calibration. And then we go on checking the model, check variances. I mean, when we do a calibration, we reduce non-response errors, but we do also reduce sampling errors. I mean, if we go back here, the difference is here. here we see the error in the sample estimate, and the reason for this error can be both non-response error and or sampling error. So when you do calibration, we reduce both these kinds of errors. And that is why we are so eager to look at the estimated variances of our final estimates after calibration. And then also we should compare the calibrated weights with the original ones by looking on these ratios. And here when we have, sometimes we get negative ratios. That sounds peculiar, but it can happen. It is not your error. It's something like that. And also sometimes we get very extremely high ratios, and that can be sign that your choice of auxiliary variables was not the good one. And then we come to the last step. You should check the model by estimating non-response bias. And that we can do if we combine registers and sample surveys. If we take a register variable that is similar to a variable in the sample survey, then we could use the response set and estimate the population parameter for this register variable. And then we use the response set, which means in this estimate there could be non-response errors. And then we take the second estimate, and that we base on the whole sample, including the non-response set, which means this estimate there we have no non-response errors because we have used the whole sample. For the whole sample we know the auxiliary variables, so there we have no non-response. And then if we compare these two estimates, the first one with possible non-response errors and the second without non-response errors, and we can find this. You have the estimated bias of number of persons employed is about plus 1%. Persons outside the labor force is about minus 2%. Unemployed is between 3% and minus 2%, like that. To get an understanding of what this means, we can compare the blue curve to the right, that is what we have published, and the red curves, there we have adjusted for this estimated non-response bias. And then our conclusion in Sweden that this is acceptable. We have, of course, non-response errors, but they are so small so that we dare to publish with confidence our labor force survey. If you go back to this model building, you remember there was level of education. That variable was not included in our set of auxiliary variables. They tried it, but some estimates got better, but some did not, so they decided not to use it. But education, it is both it both explains response propensity and it is also defines important domains. And you see here on the last table that there are quite much bigger non-response errors when we come to statistics regarding level of education. You see we have 15% non-response errors. Persons with low education, there we underestimate number of employed. Persons with high education, there we overestimate number of persons employed. So, I mean, we do quite a lot of imputations and use many registers and many auxiliary variables, but of course we produce 15,000 estimates, so that is quite possible to find some errors in some of them. Here we have some references. This is the software we use. If you want it, you can contact us. You can get this manual and also the software. And the book I have based my presentation on, that is this book of Karl-Erik Särndahl. That is the person who has developed this kind of estimators at Statistics Sweden. Yes, gracias.
Thank you very much. Now it's the turn of Marcel Bureau, please.
Du har tiden perfekt.
Ja. Får duga.
This one here, this one.
As you saw, I'm
Need a course, eh?
as a perfect teacher of this. That one,
Yeah.
next picture, when you have done something wrong, you go back
Okay,
here,
okay.
and the pointer is, everything is black, but pointer is here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh.
I will need your microphone as well.
Good that you reminded me where you can put it, not too high, here somewhere. Thank you.
Can you hear me? That's okay? Okay, so hi everyone. I'm glad to be here this morning to talk about edit and imputation at Statistics Canada, a look at the 2016 Canadian census. So let's start with the outline of my presentation. So you said this one, eh? Oh wow, it works. So we'll briefly discuss why we edit and impute data. Then I will give an introduction to the two generalized edit and imputation systems we use at Statistics Canada, namely BAMF and CanSize. And then I will give an overview of the 2016 census edit and imputation strategy. I will follow with highlights of our census edit and imputation production. And then I will conclude with future work and plans for 2021 census. So why do we edit and impute the data? This is not always done, but when it is done, this is to replace invalid or missing values in the data, or to resolve inconsistencies between values reported, or also we can deal with outlier values. These are values that are rare or suspicious in the data. The decision to do ANI or not depends on many factors. For total non-response, you may decide to, you have basically two options. You may decide to adjust weights, and this is often a popular option, or you could decide to impute all information missing. For partial or item non-response, you also have sort of two options. You could keep the non-response as it is and classify it as unknown, but then you lose information on your data. Or also a very popular method is to impute the missing information, either by using donor imputation or models like we presented before. In that case, weighting is not very practical because you would need a different weight for each variable when there is missing information, and even for crossings of two variables together, so that would be a lot of weights to maintain. So when choosing between either imputing or reweighting, you have to consider also whether you're dealing with census or survey information. For a census, you may want to keep your weights equal to 1. So maybe you don't want to alter that, so maybe you want to impute. For surveys, you already have weights greater than 1. So maybe you don't mind just doing one extra adjustments for the non-response and modify your weights slightly. So you have to look at the impact on estimation and dissemination stages when you make the decision. And of course, having a complete file makes these two steps much easier. And the third thing you have to consider is the quality of data at fine level. This is to ensure minimum number of records of rare subpopulation. And this is quite important for census. We know that in census we tend to estimate at very fine levels, so we want to make sure to have good information at these levels. Also, to do imputation, you need good auxiliary information. So if you don't have any available, or they are of bad quality, it can be an impact in the decision. And of course, if you decide to not impute, the problem is that the users may be tempted to impute themselves. And if, for example, 10 users decide to impute your data themselves using different methods, they will get different results at the end, and it's not desirable. So often the best thing is to do it ourselves in the statistical agency, have one file of official data that all users use. Now I'm going to present the two generalized systems we use at Statistics Canada. I'm going briefly to talk first about BAMF. And BAMF is not an acronym for a long term. It is just the name of a very nice city in Canada and also the name of a nice national park in Canada. So at one point they decided to call the systems by names of national parks and then they stopped, but anyway. The second system is CANSIZE, and this is an acronym, and it stands for the Canadian Census Edit and Imputation System. Both systems are available to external users at no cost. You simply need to prepare a licensing agreement with us, and you could experiment with these systems. So now I'm going to give you an idea of what BAMF can do. So BAMF is a collection of 9 SAS procedures. It can process numerical variables like revenues or expenses. And it is mostly used in our business surveys to process balance sheet information of companies. And these business surveys tend to be medium-sized because they are often repeated, and so they are not huge-sized surveys. And also they tend to have a reasonable number of variables. One important constraint of BAMF is that the user must provide the edits in a linear format. So like equalities or equations with less than or less than in the equation. You can also use outlier edits in BAMF. So what BAMF does is it automatically will do the error localization for you. So the linear edits that you specified will define a compact convex region, and then the good records that could be used as donors later will fall inside this region, and the bad records that fail at least one edit will fall outside the region. So what BAMF will do is find a theoretical solution to fix the bad records from outside the region and bring them in the region. And it will do that by identifying the minimum number of variables to change. So when this is done, when the error localization is done, you have to decide how to impute your data. To do so, you can pick between 3 methods, but actually the first one, the deterministic method is automatic. In a case of an edit which is an equality, if there is one solution, for example, the total is missing or one component of a sum is missing, then the system will automatically fix it for you. You don't even have to do anything. Then for the other types of edits, when there is more than one solution, you can ask BAMF to find the best donor using nearest neighbor approach from the same data set. And this is done by matching unselected reported variables that you identify, and the system will find a donor to correct the failed record, and it will pass the edits at the end of the process. Then another class of imputation methods are the estimators. You can impute using a mean or ratio or regression models. Also, BAMF offers prorating procedures, and this is needed when you have inequality. And for example, to be able to find more donors, you can relax your edits, let's say by 10%. Then it will find a donor within 10%. But then you have to prorate to reestablish to satisfy the equality after the imputation is done. BAMF can also do mass imputation, and this is when by design some questions are asked only to a subset of the population. So a big chunk of data is missing, and you can use BAMF to fill the missing information as well using donor, for example. But for our census processing, we have bigger challenges. I have a map of Canada here, and there are 35 million people spread in 12 million dwellings. We ask up to 52 questions, many of which are categorical data. I remember that BAMF can only deal with numerical data. We also need to apply between person edits, and our edits are not always linear. So we had to develop our own tool, and that's why we developed Concise. Now I'm going to give you the main features of Concise, what it can do. Concise is a portable program, a portable system, and you simply need an executable program, and it works on any computer platform. This is provided that you have a minimum configuration on your computer or your server. In terms of input data, it must be provided in text file because it is portable, so it can come from anywhere. But in terms of your edits, your data dictionary or metadata information and the parameters, they can be specified for ease in Excel, or you can also supply them in text files. Concise can handle categorical, numerical, and alphanumerical, like string variables. It has less constraints on the edits, the format of the edits. You can define validity, the validity set of each variable to determine the missing and invalid data. We have hard edits that have to be satisfied after imputation. We also have outlier edits when we want to monitor some strange behaviors. And also, as I mentioned before, we can specify between person edits. So that means that a person usually on census is one record, so you are able to edit between two records on the file. So in terms of the imputation methods available in Concise, you have deterministic imputation. This is where the user specifies the edits, but the user provides a solution as well. It could be because there is only one solution. It could be, as Mr. DeWall said before, it could be because you know of a systematic error that is happening almost all the time, so you decide to provide the uncertain solution. Then the next method is also available is donor imputation. So you specify only the edits in that case, and the system will automatically split the records into good and bad records based on the edits and the presence of missing or invalid values. Then the system will provide solutions based on the nearest neighbor imputation methodology, the NIM. And this is actually donor imputation, but we have a fancy name here because it was developed by Mike Bankier at Statistics Canada. And it was used for the first time for our 1996 census. And it started to be used only for a few variables, and then it grew. And now we use Concise for all our census variables. Now I'm going to describe a bit more precisely how donor imputation works in Concise. So for each failed record that needs imputation, Concise will establish a list of best donors. The best donors minimize the score function by comparing answers on specified matching variables, and this is between the donor record and the failed record. This is done in stages by looking at more donors in each stage, but in each stage we are always keeping the best donors. So we come up with a short list of the best donors for that case. Then the system will find the best imputation actions based on these donors. And by imputation action, we mean what variable, the minimum number of variables to change in order to fix the record. Finally, the system will select one imputation action at random from the subset of the best imputation actions. And we do that because at this point, let's say we ask for the 10 best imputation actions. We are very strict on who goes, what record will go on that list, and at that point they are all equivalent. So we want to select one at random. And if, for example, we want to estimate the variance associated to the imputation, we could use this list as if we had done 10 imputations of the records, because after the fact, you can go look for these donors and see what imputation they would have given. And of course, you can use 1,000 if you want to have a bigger amount for your estimation. So at the end, the imputation record must pass all edits, otherwise the imputation is not done. And that was for one failed record, and then it is repeated for each failed record. This approach has many advantages because it is data-driven. Remember that it finds the donors first, and then the imputation actions that these donors can provide. So it is a very practical solution, not a theoretical solution. Because remember in Banff, they first, we had this region, and they first theoretically say, we should change this variable and this variable to make it pass. But then they look for donors, and it could be possible that no donor can offer these solutions. Okay, so I guess it's very rare, but it could happen. So here, that's why we say it's more data-driven, because we find donors first, and then whatever is available there, we try to do actions with these donors. So, okay, one important feature of Concise is that we can simplify the edit set. This is done by, because for example, when looking at the specific failed and donor pair you are looking at this moment, the system will delete, these pairs of records, they contain only certain answers. Then the system can delete many edits involving other answers than these two records. For example, I have a failed record that is mom and dad with 3 kids. My donor is also mom and dad with 3 kids. Then all the edits about grandparents, cousins, and employees in the household and all that, they don't apply anymore, because there is no risk that the donor will give a grandparent answer, and then I have to check the edits and so on. So we could we could go from literally thousands of edits to maybe 10 edits to apply in that case. So the simplification of edit is very critical, because this is computationally efficient. Okay, but Banff cannot do that, because Banff is has not found the donor when the solution is found, so it has to keep all the edits. So to build a concise application, the user has to determine the strategy by adjusting parameters and other features, and it is very easy to customize your application. So that's all I wanted to say on Concise itself. Now I'm going to go to the overview of the census ENI strategy. So our census is conducted every 5 years, and in 2016, 75% of the dwellings received a short form. The short form comprises demography variables, language variables, and we also have income information that is collected from admin sources. So it is not asked directly to the respondent, we get it from record linkage. The remaining 25% of the dwellings receive a long form, and this long form includes the same content information as the short form, but also extra topics like labor, housing, education, and so on. When this data is collected, the first step is to deal with total non-response. Adjustments for total non-response of the short form content are done with a custom program that we call whole household imputation. This program first classifies non-respondent dwelling contacted as occupied or unoccupied. Then this dwelling, if this dwelling is classified as occupied, we will impute first the number of persons in the dwelling, and then we will impute the actual data by finding a donor dwelling of the same size. At this point, the data is still raw, and it will have to go to edited imputation like any other record. For total non-response of the long form content, we simply adjust the weights using a custom program. And it is really for a small amount of records that we do that. Then we treat partial non-response, and this is done using concise. So we split all the variables into 20 topics. We run each topic separately. Each topic is managed by a team of subject matter experts and methodologists that know their variables very well. Each topic is then divided into a series of concise modules, which is actually a combination of deterministic and donor modules. Some topics are run in a specific sequence because there are dependencies and mainly because of the matching variables that we want to use for other topics. But some other topics are run in parallel because they are independent. So now let's, would like to show you the example of demography data, how we process it in more details. As I said before, the demography data comprises sex, date of birth, marital status, common law, and relation to person one. So I guess they are very standard information. So for the relation to person one variable, of course for person one, this is person one, so they don't have to answer. But starting with person two, the first column shows, for example, that you can answer that you are husband, wife, common law, partner, opposite sex, same sex, etc. And with the how do we call that? The write-in and the write-ins, the answers that you write in full, we can obtain up to 100 possible answers for the relationship to person one. Then the second column shows that after person two, so for person 3, 4, 5, and so on, there is a slight difference, is that for son and daughters, we ask that they also report their relationship to person 2. And this is to account for blended families, because we know that now sons or daughters are maybe of only one partner and not the other partner and things like that. So as you can see, we don't yet ask for the full matrix between everyone in the household, okay? So when we get these answers, we can have some ambiguities about who is really with who in the household and so on. So this is why we use our family formation program. So this is a program that will form couples between adults in the household. It will also form parent-child pairs and grandparent-grandchild pairs in the household. From that information, we construct family information that is used in our demography edits. But it is also, the families are also used in other topics. For example, in the religion topic, it could be useful to know which people in the household are in the same family, because they may tend to speak, to have the same religion. This is done using a customized program, so it is not done in concise. When this is done, we can start the editing imputation per se. So in terms of editing, we first identify, of course, missing and invalid data. Then we apply within-person edits to check the internal consistency of a person's answers. But as I mentioned several times already, we also have between-person edits. So these are the special edits that are applied to family members. If you are not part of a family, you only get the within-person edits. Finally, we have outlier edits, and we like to define those to be able to control the number of rare but possible answers. We may keep some of these rare answers because they are plausible. If they are too extreme, we may want to impute them. But one thing we want to do for sure is to make sure to not create more outliers due to imputation. So we are ready to accept the ones that are reported, most of them, but we don't want to create more. For the imputation step itself, the core part is done using donor imputation and the NIM approach that I described before. And we do that because we often have more than one solution how to fix the problem in demography especially. And we prefer to let a concise system find the best solution. The donor imputation is done at the household level. So taking all the people in the same household, finding a donor at that level, but also looking at the families within the household. So we have like sort of three levels. We have the household, the families, and then the persons. So all of that is done at the same time. We also do a bit of deterministic imputation in the demography module, especially when there is only one solution, or for example, if a child forgot to answer, the marital status. If we decide to keep it as a child, we could say that this person is not married. So to give you an idea, just to run the demography topic, we have 15 concise modules and 5 custom programs. So that's all I wanted to say about the demography case. Now I'm going to give you some highlights about our census edit and imputation production. So in past censuses, we used to ask the income variables. It was on the long form, but we decided this time to remove it from the long form to reduce response burden. And as I said, we obtained the information from tax linkage instead. And that was done for all census populations, so all of the short form, there was an income variable attached to it. And we got a great linkage rate, and only less than 2% of records required imputation. And this information is available as matching variables. For example, for the labor topic or education topic, it could be useful to use income as a matching variable. And so this is basically to help with the consistency between modules. We also had a completely new topic added to our census. This is the admission category. It gives the type of program on which immigrants entered Canada. It was added to our long form. And again, the information was obtained from admin source, done by a linkage. And the linkage was about 90%, so only 10% non-links required imputation. Finally, in terms of the processing itself, we did something new this time, which we call the straight-through run. So that is, as soon as we got the 2006 data, we ran all topics, all modules from beginning to end, even if the results were not analyzed immediately after each topic. Because in the past, we had, of course, a long chain of production to run all the topics. But we used to do it, we would finish a topic, analyze the results, certify the results, then go to the next one. So since we had 20 topics, then the poor topic at the end could wait weeks and months before he could see his data for the first time. So that's why we decided to do it this way now. With this new way, it gives the opportunity for all topics to see data patterns and their impact much sooner. Okay? But they had to keep in mind that, okay, it was run, in one big run, data was not analyzed, but at least it gives them a feeling of what is the data much sooner. But of course, at one point, we did stop and took time to analyze the data, certify the data, and if errors were found, we had to rerun the whole thing until the end again. And the user had seen their data a first time, but now they could see it a second time with the adjustments done on the previous topics. So we actually ran the whole thing several times. And it allowed for adjustments before the end of the production and even during the production. So this is to say that, topics, they did not have only one go at it and then, just said, oh, I hope everything is fine, my time slot for production is gone and I cannot do anything, They were run several times. And it was very, very useful. But that we could do much easily because it was all automated. 1 minute? Yeah. It was all automated and we could do it very quickly. So I have to go faster, but actually what I have to say is not okay. I just wanted to give you an idea of the response rates. So they were pretty good, and the internet using electronic questionnaire was higher than last time. I think we achieved 50% last time, and now it's just above 70%. The whole imputation rate, I can go fast since I have only 1 minute. Okay, the partial non-response rates, they were pretty low as usual. And for the long form, topics are still being published like this week and next week, so I'm not giving any results yet because I don't want to give a scoop to Mexico before Canada. So future work, of course, we are going to revisit our content. We will look for the possibility of increasing the use of admin data, possibly combine many topics together, like for DNI, like doing income, education, and labor together. We would like to move our FAM form and family formation and whole household education into concise. So it's going to be much easier if everything is concise. We would like to apply machine learning algorithms to help find our matching variables, because right now they're just identified by the subject matters, but a more scientific way of identifying them would be good. And if I may take another 10 seconds, just to say for concise itself, we want to improve it, so it was pretty good for 2016, but of course, adding new features, decreasing the use of internal memory, or decreasing the processing time is always a challenge or something we would like to improve for any computer programs. And the version available dates November 2015. This is the one we used for our production. So this is a conclusion. If you want more information about BAMF, you can contact Mr. Stephen Thomas. For concise, Mrs. Lynn Bertin. And I want to say that you can contact us in French as well. Vous pouvez nous contacter en français également. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Tenemos unos minutos para preguntas y respuestas. Por favor, les pido que quienes quieran hacer una pregunta levanten la mano. Ahí hay una pregunta, Ricardo. Se identifiquen y luego hagan su pregunta. Por favor, les pido que sean breves.
Para el caso del uso de información auxiliar en registros administrativos o otras fuentes, ¿cómo se garantiza la calidad de esas fuentes de información y hasta qué nivel podemos llegar a utilizar esas fuentes? Bueno, el doctor Anders Wallgren hablaba del ejemplo de 114 estratos, ¿verdad? Pero a veces cuando uno desagrega tanto, llega el momento en que no tiene suficientes registros como para poder imputar, ¿verdad? Entonces, esa es una de las preguntas. Y después, la otra era con respecto a lo que expuso el señor Bureau de Canadá. ¿Cuánto tiempo les ha llevado a hacer todo ese análisis de la información del censo para poder imputar y corregir los datos faltantes? Y tengo la duda de que si también ese ajuste de imputación incluyó, o me pareció entenderlo, que era para hogares completos que no respondieron, entonces también esos hogares completos también se imputaban con otros hogares con características similares, si es lo que entendí.
Gracias. ¿Nos recuerda su nombre, por favor? ¿De dónde
Perdón,
viene?
Gisela Argüello, Costa Rica.
Gracias.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you like to start? One microphone.
Oh, I still have it. Yeah. So this one.
Sorry. That's your microphone.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Yes, I had some technical problems, but I heard you said about the quality of our administrative registers that we use for auxiliary variables. And they are rather good quality. I mean, it is variables from the population register. It is about country of birth and age and sex. And here we have no equality problems. And of course, we have the information also from the employment register and like that. And what is necessary for the calibration to be successful is that we have a high correlation between the register variable and the concept in the labor force survey. So I mean, there you do not have, it is not necessary to have perfect quality for each person, but if you have a strong correlation, even if you have some quality problems, it doesn't matter. If you have strong correlation, this information will help you and improve your estimates when you calibrate with these variables. Did you have more questions? No. The level of when we make disaggregate into 144 strata. Yes. No, that Statistics Sweden has done for decades. Many strata. That is because we have good quality in the registers we use for stratification. And with this 144 strata, that is because we want good quality for many domains of study. I mean, we want to produce estimates for women and men and for young and old and like that. And that is why we have this large number of strata. I know when I was a young student, we studied Cochrane together. And Cochrane, I think he says that more than 5 strata, it is not necessary. It will not improve everything. And then we came to Statistics Sweden, and then they had 144 strata. And at first we thought they were crazy, but now we understand they are sometimes crazy, but sometimes very clever. Huh? Okay.
Mr. Bureau?
I think I will start with your second question because I remember it. No, I do remember the first one as well. But okay, I think your second question was about the whole household imputation. And that was done for the short form, okay, so only the demography, language, and income data. And yes, because when when the collection is done, we have a visitors register, and we can, for example, know by neighbors, or if you go back to the field, you can know from the neighbors that, oh yeah, it's 4 people live there or 3 people live there and stuff like that. So this is how, and we use also other information, but I don't have all the details with me. But so that's why we first impute the number of people. Then we say, okay, using donor, okay, imputation, we try to find a donor within the same geographic region, okay, and we sort of duplicate the record, okay, and I don't remember all the details because it's not done by my team, but basically this is to have a full file for at least the short form. And as I said in my presentation, this is about 2% of the dwellings that are occupied. Because of course, there could be no answer to a dwelling because it's not occupied. So then we deal with those another way, but it's only for occupied records. So it's basically cloning a similar size household in the same geography. And there are probably other criteria that they use. Your other question, I think, was about the time it takes to do everything. It's pretty long. I mean, of course, we do tests of all our concise modules, and that is done for at least a year and a half in advance. And what we do is we take the previous census data, mock it to look like what we expect the next census will be, and then we do the test with that. But then when the real data comes, we start all, as I said, we do the straight-through run, and this is done within a week or 10 days of computer. But then to analyze everything, it takes up to a year and a half. And that's why we start, our dissemination schedule is every month we have a new topic, and it takes over a year. Okay, so it's a lot of work. And I think today or tomorrow, yesterday, I think they released a new topic, and so that's why I didn't want to give the figures because they are still publishing up to the end of the calendar year, I think. So I hope it answers your question.
Thank you very much. ¿Hay otra pregunta? Hay 2 preguntas. ¿Podemos pasar el micrófono aquí atrás, por favor? Y luego allá, y vamos a ver si nos alcanza el tiempo para más.
Thank you. I'm Araceli Ortega from the Government School of Tecnológico de Monterrey. And I have questions for both. Because the imputation you're doing or you presented here, which is very good for one shot, probably going through, how do you do the imputation when you have attrition of the sample? When you have several waves of information, and then you have missing data in one wave, then you go to the next wave, and then to the third wave, and you have attrition, how do you reweight or input for different waves? That would be a question. Like when you have several, like if you have census 1, census 2, and then you want to do analysis with both samples, and then you have attrition in the sample. And then for Anders, when you have, it's very difficult here in this country to get registered data, for instance, from the labor or from the taxes. But once you get it and you want to do a sampling and you have non-response and response, is it possible or is it valid to do another sample within the same registered data with other survey, and then you have non-response and response, and then you can check the patterns of your non-responses so you know how the non-responses are behaving and the responses are behaving, and then try to do the imputation with those patterns. I don't know if I'm clear.
Yes.
Microphone.
Microphone, yeah. So, I mean, we have quite a lot of information. You saw on the last slides, we had response patterns for age and sex and for people. I mean, we can analyze our response patterns quite in detail because we have register information for all persons, both the response set and the non-response set. So it is no problem to make this analysis, because we have the registers with both parts. I'm not really clear of your question.
We can leave that for
Yeah, or later. Yeah, I can.
You can ask me privately.
Do you have any comments about this?
No, because she was referring to repeated surveys. Your question was about repeated surveys, and I don't have, since I work on the census, it's every 5 years, so, and it has been too long since I worked on business surveys that were repeated, so I would not want to mislead you on that. So.
Thank you. Jael, por favor, si quieres hacer tu pregunta, presentarte y hacerla brevemente, si es posible.
Buen día, mi nombre es Jael de INEGI y tengo una pregunta para el caso de los censos de Canadá. Veo que un alto porcentaje tanto del cuestionario básico como ampliado se responde por internet. Mi primera pregunta es si esos formularios tienen alguna clase de validación básica, por ejemplo, de relaciones lógicas, o en dado caso que no, pues supongo que después lo trabajan precisamente en la imputación edición. Y en dado caso que sí, ¿qué clase de validaciones tiene los formatos que ponen en internet?
Gracias, Jael. Tenemos, if you agree, we take another question. I think that will be more efficient. Alfonso Miranda tiene la mano levantada.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Hi. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very nice. My question is about the systematic errors, no? Because you've been talking about, well, when we know that something is going systematically wrong, then we do manual editing. And then we have the system that deals with the things that we believe that is just random error. So my question is, you haven't said much about the systematic part. That is actually what, in the area where I work, I'm an economist. So most of the time we worry about the systematic part because that's where people are lying or changing the information systematically because it suits them. And then there are informational issues there. There are incentives, for example, with income, with employment. When you are able to claim a benefit, then I don't want to tell you that I'm actually doing some jobs off the shelf, because then I might be detected and not get this, these benefits. So I'm gonna lie, and that's a kind of systematic thing. That depends on things that I actually don't observe, not even in the registers. So how do we deal with that kind of very difficult thing? And then for the other part, the automatic part, that things are, we believe that it's random. What are our incentives to do much about that? Because if it's random, then we shouldn't be doing much with that. I don't know. I mean, it's a very general question, but I would like you to comment on that.
Gracias, Alfonso. I think this is the last question we can take because of the time. So, please, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can start with the first question there. Yeah, we had very basic edits on our electronic questionnaire, but it was mainly to check that, for example, we, instead of just asking the date of birth, we also asked the age of the person. So the system was automatically comparing the two, and if it was different, it would tell to the person, "Oh, are you sure?" Things like that. So as far as I remember, there were small checks like that, but after that, after, all these questionnaires were sent to the same ENI as the paper questionnaire. So, we didn't do a lot more edits in that we could say, oh, these records are perfect because they come from internet. No, they are not perfect. It was minimal editing that we did, so we had to do all the others. Then I had a second question, was... oh no, but to answer you, quickly, sorry, for me, a systematic error is when, for example, we realize that a question is not well understood on the questionnaire. And because of that, all people will systematically make the same error. As far as saying, oh, I want to hide my income or make it lower or something like that, I don't consider it, maybe it is systematic for every people in the population, but I'm not sure. So I find that very hard to distinguish, so I can't offer more. Maybe you have a better answer for that one?
Well, income data, we use register data because it has better quality. To ask people how much they earn. Yes, so that improves quality. And also when it comes to level of education, we do not ask people. We use register data because it has much better quality. So the answer can be to use administrative data.
No, but that's why we just did that in this census. Okay, we claimed that it was to reduce response burden, but we know also it's better quality. So.
Ok, pues demos un fuerte aplauso a nuestros panelistas. We thank you very much for your participation. We even thank you by written. So here
thank you, Marcel.
This is yours.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, sorry. So we passed the test.
Perfect. Thank you so much.